Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. Today I wanted to talk to you about the holidays and how to have a Merry Christmas this year. And the reason I'm going to confine this to Christmas is because we're going to talk about religion and on how religion can unify the world. Right now, what we have is a world that is in a lot of crisis. People are afraid. The pandemic has just torn apart the planet. Okay? The economy's in crisis. People are being laid off. There's food shortages. This is going to be a pretty bleak year for people. There have been the election has given a ray of hope, but is it enough to pull everybody out of the crisis? And will it come in time to help us on an individual basis? So that's what I wanted to talk about, how to make Christmas, instead of this year in particular, how to make it something that can be happy and merry for everybody under all the circumstances that we have. At our prayer circle, Archangel Michael told us that the difference between heaven and hell is that in heaven there's a solution to your problems. It's not that God is going to come down and solve your problems like waving a magic wand and everything is going to be okay. It's that you have to have a solution to your problems. There has to be a way that you can see it. Now, one of the problems that we're looking at here, I've been talking about in previous videos, has been like what hell is. And that is, let's say hell, the definition of hell is that there's no solution to your problems. But it's also an idea where you're relying on power games, then games are not working. But one of the ideas in particular is the act of revenge. And we're going to talk about that in our exit strategy for Iraq and how it works and why it doesn't work. So we're looking at people being angry, lashing out. I saw a video. I was a dental hygienist, and I saw a video about cytokine storms and how they affect people. When that happens, it creates havoc in the physical body. It destroys brain cells and lung cells and heart and all the many organs are affected by that. Well, the cytokine storms is a form of defense, and if you don't have a defense, what basically it destroys you. It's like on the planning process, there's a point where if you can't solve the problems related to security, then it's probably not going to go on anymore. And that's the same thing with your life. If you can't defend yourself, how can you do that? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the planning process, and we're going to look at how to defend yourself. And we're going to look at all sorts of different ideas and give you a way to defend yourself, a way to solve problems, a way to have a Merry Christmas. Okay. The COVID-19 is, as I said in a previous video, and you should go back and check that out. The COVID-19 came about when somebody equated ideas that shouldn't have been equated, and that is equating people and snakes. And with all of the things that have been happening, all the lies and the illusion and wondering, the cyber attacks, all over the world, the rise of authoritarianism, that is part of the movement that has been happening about world peace. So consider for just a minute what happens if you figure out how to solve these problems through religion. Okay, so over the centuries, religion has been a great divider, but it also has the potential to be a unifier. So if it comes actually from God, how could it be a divider? If we're all God's children and we're all part of God's creation, how can it be a separator? It's just because of misunderstandings that where people equate ideas. Okay, we go along thinking that what we believe is actually the truth, and it isn't. We all live in the third dimension, which is called the illusion. So the religion is actually a unifying force when it's based on the idea of what God's interpretation of religion is. If it's man's interpretation of religion, like a cultural interpretation of universal law, God's law, then we get ourselves into a lot of trouble, creates chaos. But when we're looking at it from God's perspective, then it is a unifying force. That's what I wanted to talk to you today about, so that you can have yourself a Merry Christmas. Now, I'm going to include every person on the planet, no matter whether you're a Muslim, a Jew, a Buddhist, a Confucianist, a Hindu, a Taoist. I'm including everybody on the planet as part of Christianity now, because Jesus came to teach the principles of creativity. And he as he was talking, his whole focus was on creativity, on how to create a plan, how to do something. Okay, now what we have right now. So let's say that what we have, in my previous video, I talked about a problem, a major problem that is in the world. And this problem is the rationale for a plan. And if you can come up with a plan that can solve the problems, then what happens is you can function based on your talents and gifts from our Creator. Okay, so now, what about the planning process? How can we do that? The planning process, I said, you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. You're going to do both at the same time, because it's huge. It's a big process where you have to think it out. So now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the idea of how anybody can take an idea and figure out how to do that. Okay, this is your solution to your problems, and we're going to use religion. We're going to unify the world's 7 major religions, and we're going to address it the way God would look at that idea. Okay, that's the faith of the pure ray, the first idea on the second row of the World Peace Marketing Strategy. Okay, this is my Christmas gift to every person on the planet today. Okay, let's say we have a problem, and now what we're going to do is find us the solution to that problem. You have to understand the root cause of the problem, and that's why when you're speaking from your own experience, and you know it works because it's always worked. Now, then you can come up with a solution. But what happens though, if let's say that you have a problem, let's say that you're the U.S. government, and you have a problem because you need resources. So you have 3 ideas on how you can solve this problem. You always have 3 choices. One is to go up, one is to go straight ahead and ignore the crisis, and the other one is to go down into the power games. And that's where the U.S. government has failed. Oftentimes our foreign policy doesn't work because we've gone down into the games. Okay, so imagine that instead of making an agreement, a trade agreement with the country, we make a trade agreement with like one individual in the country, or we wage war. Okay, so in the Beatitudes, Jesus said, the meek shall inherit the earth. That means you don't have to fight for anything that's rightfully yours. Okay, you don't have to fight for anything. You don't have to wage war to get what you want. So all the countries that have their borders have been realigned because of acts of war, and the Middle East cutting that up, across cultural lines, that didn't work. Basically, it just created chaos in that region. So now, what can we do with religion? So let's say Jesus was born into his culture with the idea that he was going to they were ready to hear the message at the time. Jesus taught the principles of creativity, of coming up with a plan. Opposing that idea was the Muslims. Now, I'm not talking about saying we don't like your idea, because if you can come up with a really good plan, hey, let's do that. Okay, if there's a problem, and that's places in the Middle East where people are coming up with a really good plan and working together to make it happen, and that's where you have the tolerance that comes about. Okay, that's happening all over in the Middle East. It's not a constant war. There's tolerance going on there too, because people come together to solve problems. Okay? So what you have is, but on the opposite side of the planning process, planning circle, if you put all the religions into a circle, like a pie, each religion, there would be 7 major religions and 7 pieces of the pie. So the first piece of the pie has to do on the, let's say if you look at a clock, it would be from like midnight to 2:30 or something like that. Okay, so then on the opposite side, opposing that, is Islam, and the Prophet Muhammad came to teach the principles of equality. So if you come up with a plan that doesn't treat everybody equally and fairly, then they'll stand up and protest. So let's say that you come up with this. There's a plan now that they're working on. I saw that in the Middle East, where to help everybody have water. Okay, they're taking water, they're purifying it, and they're sharing it among everybody. So everybody's willing to work together to make that happen. Everybody needs water. So that's an equalizing force that they have. When there's not enough water, then they come together to do something about it. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about, is if you come up with a plan that says, I'm going to go into your country and I'm going to take your resources, then people stand up and protest, because that's not fair. That's not right. Okay, so the Muslims stand and protest. Now, if you deny the Muslims a voice, they say, I don't have to listen to you. I'm not going to listen to you. Then what happens is they raise their voice to be heard, oftentimes to the point of violence. That's where terrorism comes in. When you deny somebody a voice, they raise their voice to be heard. So, it might seem, okay, now this is another power game. I don't have to listen to you because you're a terrorist and therefore you're evil and all these things. So you see, it's like power games. So each of the religions plays a favorite power game. They teach a certain principle, but they also play a power game when there's abuse of power, because they lack something. When you've taken something away from somebody, then they have to fight for it. Okay, so now you have a problem. Let's say the Muslims are standing up in protest. People see a problem, but it's up to the Christians, basically, the principles of Christianity, to come up with a plan, and that's where Jesus came in with the Beatitudes. Now, so that creates kind of like a back and forth idea between the Muslims and the Christians on this circle with all the religions in it. Okay, so when that happens, then if the Jews, we're talking about Judaism, so Moses taught the principles of productivity. And when you think of it, a stereotype of a Jewish family, for example, you see oftentimes brothers will be partners. Those are the people who bring in the people that are your partners and the people you need to help you create your plan. Gautama Buddha taught the principles of prosperity. Ironically, he taught the principles of prosperity. But on the other side of the circle, there is Confucianism. So you think of China being productive and making all these things made in China. How many times have you seen made in China? Okay, and the reason for it is you'd think that would be prosperity, but that's capacity. They're functioning from their capacity, except they're not functioning from their capacity when they manufacture cheap things that people really don't want to buy. Okay, so that's like a power game. So you look at Buddhism. How could Gautama Buddha, who sat under a tree and begged for his food, how could he teach the principles of that? But he did, because basically he was making win-win agreements with his idea. Okay, so Confucius taught the principles of capacity, functioning from your capacity. But what is your capacity? The Chinese have beautiful art. They have manufactured remarkable things. But basically, what are the principles of capacity? So on the opposing side, so Gautama Buddha was teaching the principles of capacity also, because he was functioning from his own capacity to create a sense of prosperity, but his capacity was also just to be a spiritual person. Okay, now all of these ideas are being reflected, being covered and addressed in the Faith of the Pure Ray, the first project in the second row of the World Peace Marketing Strategy. So what I'm going to just suggest to you, if you really want to create a project, if you want to function from your capacity, come up with a plan that benefits everybody, bring in the partners that you need, stand on the principles of that. If you can just go check out the pureray.org and see what it is. I'll put the link on the bottom of in the description. Now I channeled a book with this is my manuscript for the Faith of the Pure Ray. It explains to this. It's not finished. It's only halfway done. So I have to be able to answer questions with this. I have another person who's going to come in and help me. And when he does that, he's going to help explain how to do this with this book. But I channeled this book with the following entities. Okay? The first one is going to blow your socks off, if you excuse the expression. The first one was Saddam Hussein. He came to me, and basically he did the introduction with me. So Saddam Hussein, how could Saddam Hussein be interested in this idea? For one, he was a religious man. He loved God very much. He was somebody who wrote books, and he used allegory, and he explained things about how the way things are from his perspective. But he was also a man who encouraged his people to actually thrive and to be creative in their own capacity. Iraq stood out as having one of the highest GDPs in the Middle East. The Muslim countries that are that have the royal families, a lot of times the schism is so great, or the split between the two levels is so great that we were relying on oil reserves, and they made a great deal of money. But then what happened was the lower people don't have the capacity. Well, by Saddam Hussein in Iraq, they were never able to really thrive because of the sanctions that were put on him. But then what he did was he encouraged everybody to function on a higher level. The money was invested from the wealth was not so much into his pocket, but into the whole country. Okay, so in other words, Saddam Hussein was the first, but then Lady Gaia, and then I am, the male and female aspects of God, participated in this. Jesus, Moses, Gautama Buddha, Muhammad, Carol Wojtyla, the Pope John Paul II, Rama, Confucius, and Lao Tzu. So this book is going to help. I promise that when I did this book, that this would help the proceeds from this book that I did would help to rebuild Iraq, because because the United States, when we went in and invaded Iraq, we took away their unalienable rights to be able to create their life. We destroyed their economy. We created chaos. And now, for us to we all went into the abyss. It backlashed on us. And now, to come out of it, we have to undo the damage we've done. We're going to guarantee the Iraqi people and every person on the planet their inalienable rights. But then in our Iraq proposal, we have to undo the damage we've done in Iraq, and the money that comes, half the money that goes to rebuild Iraq is going to come from the proceeds from this book. So as average people, like me and you and everybody I know, and most of the people that you might be just an average person just like everybody else. We would all like to know how to create the life you want, because that's something that everybody wants. We don't know how to do it. But now we're starting to learn how to do it. And the information that's in this book helps to unify everybody around this idea. And when the book finally comes out, and when it is published, then it'll go, the money will help to go in to rebuild Iraq and help them get back on their feet again. But as we do that, what happens is that helps us do it too. When George W. Bush promised the coalition countries that we don't know what it is that he actually promised those countries, those world leaders, that nobody knows what that was, except the people who were involved, what benefits they would get, maybe contracts or a way to do it. But those were power grabs. Those were things where they were saying, we're going to get revenge on Saddam Hussein, and we're going to get the money, and then what happens is that the backlash. That was something like regime change. All those policies never had the chance to work because they were based on revenge. And the problem with revenge is that nobody's in agreement for what you're doing. And we're going to go into that. You think everybody's working together with this whole coalition of countries, and we're going to go in and take Iraq, and 87% approval rating, and we're going to go steal their natural resources, their oil, and our gas prices will go down, or whatever it is. But that backlash on the United States. So what God intends for people to do is the principles of the cooperation of nature, where everybody shares what's easy to share. This is you, and this is the other person, and when you come together, the two circles overlap, and it creates what's called the vesica piscis. There's a little line between there that makes the agreement. You share what's easy to share, and you get back 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. You're unlimited as to what you can do, because each win-win agreement builds trust and sets the stage for future agreements. Okay, so let's say that what everybody has to know what they have to share, what's easy to share, and that's your talents and gifts. On a national level, it's your natural resources. So what benefits you to share? If I'm a singer, it benefits me to sing. And if I can help people by singing, and it benefits me to do it, I have no problem doing it. I'm a psychic. I'm a channel. My gift from God is to be able to communicate with anyone on the other side. It's easy for me to channel. I channel all the time. You would not believe how I channel all the time. And it's like I do. It's just what I do. And it's easy for me to do that. So every part of my project for world peace is based on my talents and gifts. So I have government proposals that I channeled. I have newsletters that I'm working on to channel. That if I have a government proposal, I can also take that government proposal and highlight it in a newsletter. That's World Peace Newsletter. I can channel, if I can do that, I can advertise my books that I channeled in there. And then I can do things like donate half the money that comes from it to help rebuild Iraq. And it benefits me to do it. So if I have my publishing company, it benefits me to unify the world's 7 major religions. It's kind of like being heaven on earth. If the only thing you ever did was to share your talents and gifts with others and keep figuring out around a planning circle how that can happen. So I have my publishing business, I have my cash flow, I have my vocation and my avocation. And it's all based on my talents and gifts, and nobody can steal it. Because as a channel, it's not that you channel, it's who you channel. And God, if God is willing to work with me in this book to help rebuild Iraq, then I have God helping me do that. Okay, see what I mean? It's like if your project is based on your talents and gifts, every aspect of it has to be based on it. Okay, so if I have my publishing company, then I can open bookstores and I can bring in my partners and I can the professional publishing team. And if I have that, then I also can go on the road and I can build more stores, or I can do things like that. And then I can actually bring in the next group of people to come in. And if I can do that, I can address all these issues. But then I'm secure also that if I have God, then I have working with me, then we have the root cause of the problems, and everybody can do the same thing if dealing with the rationale of the plan. And then what happens is then I can deal with security, because as I am working on my plan and people are trying to steal it, they can't steal it because it's based on my talents and gifts. Okay, now how is somebody who's trying to steal my project going to be able to convince God to give it to them? Those people, they might be able to tell lies about me. They might be able to weave an illusion. Hey, but you can't overcome God. If God is the one who's willing to work with me, then they're going to try to be a channel. Who are they going to channel? Okay, excuse me. And then security issues. That I can just keep going and working on my project, and I have no issues related to security. Then what I have to do is then I have to go out, and the biggest obstacle ever is to overcome the fear that you have that you can't make it happen. Then when you overcome that fear, then you start functioning from your capacity, and that's when tolerance starts to come in, because everybody is going to be working together on that project. So imagine me sitting here, a very average person sitting here, and I am able to go and help rebuild Iraq, which is something that would be totally overwhelming. And because I can do that, you can help me rebuild Iraq by starting to work on your life and to prove it's possible to do that. Okay, so it benefits me to share with you this information. This book is not ready to go yet. I have to bring in the professional publishing team to do that. And then I had to prove my capacity to do that. And one of the things that is possible is to demonstrate my capacity is to take the information in this book and unify the world's 7 major religions. So that's my gift to you this Christmas, is if you are trying to rebuild your life after it's been totally trashed by the pandemic and the fact that the economy is going stagnant and you don't know where you're going to get food for your family, start working like this and start to figure out what your talents and gifts are. But don't rely on power games. You have to figure out what it is that is you're willing to share, what you have in abundance, and what you can share with others, and it benefits you to share. Okay? If you can take that and come around the planning process, You can be a homeless person. You can be a homeless person, and you can share what you have. When I started this, I'm going to share something with you, and this is not something that I'm ashamed of or anything, because my guides have included it in the books, and you're bound to find out sooner or later. But when I started this out, my family, members of my family, basically thought that I was crazy. They might have liked it, but they were not going to carry me through. I was squeezed out of my job. I ended up being homeless. I had a family issue. I ended up being homeless, and I was living on. When I first became homeless because of this family dispute, I ended up with a rusty old car that belched smoke, $2, and 2 suitcases, and my daughter. We were homeless. We had nothing, but what we had was what was in this storage unit, things that we had put in the storage, and I lived off selling things at garage sales for a long time. Then I had to start making win-win agreements, but I had my gifted channel, but I was not able to do it because after a period of time, people started to interfere with my gift. They have been harassing me, and I have to deal with security issues, and that allows me to go through, as I go through and work on my project, basically the people who are interfering in my life, you'll find out they're called boogeyman. Every project has a boogeyman, So you'll find out that when you do that, you need to look at the planning process first and do things on the mental level. When I also have a series of books called the Planning Process books. So this is the first idea. This is the way that you go from hell, where you don't see any solution to your problems, to heaven. Okay, this is the gift I'm giving you, is how to get out of hell and into heaven. You have to stop playing the games, and you have to start working on finding a solution to a problem, and then coming up with a plan that's based on your talents and gifts. Okay? The difference between heaven and hell is that in heaven there's a solution to your problems. So this allows you to get out of hell and into heaven. But if you got into trouble based on the power games, like regime change, like invading Iraq with a preemptive strike, and we'll go into all the reasons why in the Power series books that I did. Okay, so that's where we're going to go now, is you're going to go to school. The Faith of the Pure Ray is like a school that you go to that teaches you the principles of each of the major religions. I'm going to set up the program, and it's going to be the first one. The first school is actually going to be in, hopefully in Geneva, Switzerland. And the reason why we're going to build it in Geneva is there's several reasons here, but the one is that we're also going to build a genocide museum there. That's the second project. And to explain that when somebody is trying to play the power games and is so abusive and is trying to stop progress and is trying to drag you backwards and is weaving the illusion and is like the devil at the bottom of the pit of hell, dragging you backwards in your progress. That's what Lady Gaia told us, is that the devil is somebody who's dragging you backwards in your progress. But what happens if you're way up and the person that's dragging you backwards is just kind of an illusion? Okay, so I'm not putting any judgment on anybody. So this is not a sense of judgment. This is the power games that people believe in. Everybody plays the power games. We believe that the games are going to work, and they don't. They stop working. Okay, so as we do that, we're going to build it in Geneva next to the Genocide Museum, because the power game associated with bringing in partners has to do with Judaism. Okay? that the power game associated with Judaism is genocide. This is all something we're going to talk about in far greater depth over and over again with each of the government proposals and things like that. So as you do that, as somebody comes out and is making life hell for you and is weaving an illusion, let's say Moses was he taught the principles of productivity. The principles of productivity. But he also was involved with this idea. He broke through the illusion. If you remember the scene in the movie, The 10 Commandments, where he's in front of the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh's priests have the staff, and they turn it into a snake. Well, he can do the same thing. Or he uses the staff and he turns it into a snake. And then they say, oh, we can do that too. We can weave that illusion. A snake. We're talking about the snakes, and we're talking about all of these ideas, and we're talking about overcoming the boogeymen who are trying to interfere in your life. When you reach the point in your progress and you go all the way around the planning circle and you demonstrate your capacity, then those people become part of your support level, because they're like opposing you. They're on the opposite side of the circle. They're addressing these issues also. When you are on this level with capacity, then they are on the level of the support level. They become your allies in this. So the planning process has to be very carefully thought out in your mind. And the way to get started on this is to know that if you look at the principles associated with the planning process, we'll go into that later in far greater depth. But you can start out by looking at the faith of the pure ray, and how it unifies the religions into that one idea, that it becomes a school where each of the clerics or the priests, the imams, the rabbis, they come together and they teach the principles associated with that idea of their religion. They're going to be all working together in the same building, and that building, there's a description of it in the Faith of the Pure Ray. It's 3 floors. The lower floor will be the classrooms for each of the religions. It'll be like a circle, the classrooms. Then there's going to be the offices, and then there's going to be the places where they teach the people about this, like the people who would like to learn how to do it and go into these principles, become teachers themselves, and then they'll just continue to spread out. Now, I'm going to solve a problem here just based on this idea of the faith of the pure ray. Let's say that and the plan for the international government, because that is going to be part of that too. Okay, so let's say that you are a person. Let's say that there are these buildings, these churches all over, and they're teaching people how to create the life they want. Something that, let's say, the spreading. Now, let's say that we have a problem, and that immigrants, let's say that in Central America, we have an immigrant problem. In Central America, there are people there who are walking 2,000 miles to come here and ask for asylum. They don't have anything. They're carrying everything they have. And they don't have any banks necessarily. They don't have any way to store things. They're easily controlled and manipulated. Can be sold into slavery. Young women are being raped. So now let's say that's a problem that we have. Okay, that it's a problem. Okay, what would happen right now? Right now, the problem is that the people are walking and they're asking for asylum, and the U.S. government under Trump has been keeping people out. Okay, we're going to build a wall to keep you out. We're going to make sure that you don't get in. We're going to deport you. We're going to consider you to be illegal immigrants. We're going to just send you back into where you were. Okay, what would happen if there was a church like that there in Central America, and the people were going there, and they said, "I'm being oppressed." One of the laws associated with this, one of the rights that people will have under the international government will be to leave. Their government might not stand on all these principles because it's too big of a cultural change, but one of the rights people will have is the right to leave. Okay? So they go to this building, this school, they go there, they apply at the international government to be a part, with the international government to leave, and the international government will figure out where they're most likely to fit in to that. Then, as they're going to school, the international government will give them the opportunity to make the leap and then to come down in a place like a Spanish-speaking country, where they can go and they have asylum there. But instead of being somebody who's been oppressed, they're students at the school. They have their idea based on their talents and gifts. And instead of being somebody, hey, we don't want you here because you're taking our jobs, you're doing this or whatever, they're going to come and they're going to come down into the other school. They're going to come down in their place where they're accepted, because the country needs people who have those talents and gifts. They're not indentured servants. They're coming. They have the capacity. People with nonprofits can offer them the opportunity to come in. They can sponsor people who they're being certified, so to speak, that they're fine upstanding members of society. So they're not criminals or whatever. At the same time, on the government level, the international government is based on the U.S. Constitution. So the power that a country has is not based on power games that are oppressive to the people, but on their natural resources and where people fit in and how people can. Okay, so Saudi Arabia, for example, they've been relying on the oil reserves, and the oil basically is running out. It's been tapped for a long time, so basically the oil has run out, and then what's happening is they need to transition their economy into a small businesses, which is the backbone of any economy, not the oil reserves. So each country has to know what it is that they're good at doing. But what happens is the power a nation has within the international government is on population. So let's say that China has an advantage because their population is very big. A little tiny country basically will have very little. This is the founding fathers of our Constitution said, a big country with lots of population or a little country, this one will have more power. China would have more power in the International House of Representatives, but the little countries have more power per capita in the rights. They have those few people compared to China have more say based on the rights of the people. So in a way, what it will do is it will behoove a government, a nation, to be nice to its people, to stop playing the oppressive power games. Otherwise, they're just going to lose power on the international level. Okay, so that's all I have to say. Pureray.org is the solution. This book will, like I said, it'll explain all of this stuff, what each of these remarkable people had. And I suppose Saddam Hussein is probably thinking about, when he agreed to do this, I wouldn't be surprised if he isn't saying, I wonder if Karen would be willing to donate half the money that comes from this to rebuild Iraq. So Saddam Hussein is still looking out over his country and working to help them. And there was one other thing that I wanted to share with you that's kind of an intriguing thing. Saddam Hussein came to me one time and he said, I'm going to give you some information that he hasn't given it to me yet. He said that is going to allow Iraq to prosper. He said he's going to tell me where the money is that he hid. But he'll only tell me, he won't tell anybody else. So if I murdered, that money's gone. Where did he hide his money? So imagine what happens then is that the people of Iraq might be interested in, was it $50 billion or something like that? In getting $50 billion to help to start the process. And then what we'll do is we'll just work with them and help to rebuild Iraq. Why would they trust anybody, after what people have done to them? They don't trust anybody. So we're going to start by working with the people in the Democratic Republic of Congo and let them teach it, and then we'll just kind of figure out the best way to do that, to build trust and set the stage for future agreements. So, God already has everything figured out. Welcome to heaven on earth. And have a Merry Christmas, everybody on the planet. Okay, because there's a solution to every problem. And with the planning process, if you know the root cause of the problem with the planning process, you can find the solution. So, thanks for listening. I hope you like, share, and subscribe. Thanks. Have a Merry Christmas, everybody.